The rain hammered against the windshield like 1,000 tiny fists as Marcus gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white against the worn leather. In the passenger seat, his 8-year-old daughter, Emma, pressed her face against the glass, watching the storm transform their quiet Montana highway into a river of darkness. They were heading home from her soccer practice, the same route they'd taken 100 times before, when Emma's small voice cut through the rhythm of the wipers. "Daddy, stop! There's someone on the road!" Marcus slammed the brakes, his heart lurching into his throat. Through the sheets of rain, illuminated briefly by his headlights, he saw what looked like a crumpled pile of clothes on the shoulder. But as he looked closer, his stomach dropped. It wasn't clothes. It was a person lying motionless in the mud. For a split second, Marcus hesitated. Every warning bell in his head went off. It could be a trap. It could be dangerous. He had Emma to think about. His little girl who meant everything to him since her mother had passed 3 years ago. But then he looked at his daughter's face, her green eyes wide with concern, reflecting the kind of pure compassion he'd tried so hard to nurture in her. "We have to help them, Daddy," Emma whispered, and Marcus knew she was right. He pulled over, threw the car into park, and turned to Emma. "Lock the doors behind me. If anything seems wrong, you call 911, understand?" She nodded solemnly, clutching his old cell phone in her small hands. Marcus stepped into the storm, immediately soaked to the bone. As he approached the figure, he could make out more details. It was a man, probably in his 60s, his face ashen and lips blue. Blood seeped from a gash on his forehead, mixing with the rainwater pooling around him. The man's eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused and terrified. "Please!" the man rasped, his voice barely audible over the storm. "Help me." Marcus didn't think twice. He carefully lifted the man, surprised by how light he was, how frail beneath the soaked clothing. With Emma's help directing him from inside the car, Marcus managed to get the stranger into the back seat. Emma had already called 911, her voice steady despite her shaking hands as she gave the dispatcher their location. The nearest hospital was 40 minutes away, and the ambulance would take at least 30 to reach them in this weather. Marcus made a decision. He drove, pushing his old truck as fast as he dared on the slick roads, while Emma climbed into the back seat, using her pink soccer warm-up jacket to apply pressure to the man's head wound, just like she'd seen on television. "What's your name?" Emma asked softly, trying to keep the man conscious. "Robert," he managed, his breathing labored. "Robert Chen. I'm Emma. That's my dad, Marcus. You're going to be okay, Mr. Robert. We're taking you to the hospital." Robert's eyes filled with tears. "My daughter. I need to tell my daughter. I'm sorry." Marcus's grip tightened on the wheel. He knew that desperation, that need to hold on to the people you loved. "You'll tell her yourself," he said firmly. "Just stay with us." The drive felt eternal. Emma talked to Robert the entire time, telling him about her soccer team, about her school, about the stray cat they'd adopted last month. Her small voice became a lifeline, pulling Robert back every time his eyes started to close. When they finally burst through the emergency room doors, Marcus carrying Robert in his arms with Emma running beside them, the medical staff sprang into action. Robert was whisked away, leaving Marcus and Emma standing in the harsh fluorescent light, soaking wet and shaking from adrenaline. A nurse brought them towels and hot chocolate. A police officer took their statement. And then came the waiting. Emma fell asleep against Marcus's shoulder, exhausted from the ordeal while he sat numbly, wondering if they'd done enough, if Robert would survive. 3 hours later, a doctor approached them, her tired face breaking into a smile. "He's going to make it. You saved his life. Another 30 minutes and we would have lost him to hypothermia and blood loss. Are you family?" Marcus shook his head. "No, we just found him on the road." The doctor's eyes widened. "You stopped for a stranger in this storm? That's remarkable. Most people wouldn't have." She paused. "He's been asking for you. Would you like to see him?" They followed her to Robert's room. He was hooked up to various monitors, but his color had returned and his eyes were alert. When he saw them, tears rolled down his weathered cheeks. "I don't know how to thank you," Robert said, his voice stronger now. "I was driving to see my daughter in Billings. We haven't spoken in 5 years, not since her mother died. I blamed her for not being there, and she blamed me for not calling the ambulance sooner. So much wasted time." He looked at Emma. who had climbed onto the chair beside his bed. "But watching you with your father tonight, seeing how much you love each other, it reminded me what matters. I had a heart attack behind the wheel. The car went into the ditch. I managed to crawl out, but then I collapsed. I was sure I was going to die alone in that rain, with things broken between me and my daughter." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "What happened with your daughter? It wasn't your fault. Grief makes us do things we don't mean. The nurse helped me call her from the hospital," Robert continued. "She's driving here now. I get another chance because of you too." He reached out a trembling hand, and Emma took it without hesitation. "You didn't just save my life tonight. You saved my family." The story spread through the small Montana town like wildfire. Local news picked it up. Then regional stations, and within days, national media outlets were calling. Marcus, uncomfortable with the attention, tried to decline the interviews, but Emma convinced him otherwise. "People need to know that helping is worth it. Daddy," she said with the wisdom of someone far beyond her years. Their story resonated across the country. In a time when headlines were filled with division and tragedy, here was a simple act of kindness that reminded people of their shared humanity. Donations poured into Marcus's struggling auto repair shop. Strangers sent letters and gifts. Emma received a commendation from her school for bravery. But the most meaningful moment came 3 weeks later, when Robert appeared at their door, his daughter Sarah beside him. They'd been rebuilding their relationship, going to counseling together, making up for lost time. "We wanted to thank you properly," Robert said, handing Marcus an envelope. Inside was a check that made Marcus's eyes widen. "I can't accept this," Marcus started, but Robert held up his hand. "Please, let me do this. You gave me back my daughter. That's worth everything I have and more." He knelt down to Emma's level. "And you, young lady, you're the bravest person I've ever met. I've set up a college fund in your name. Your father's raised an extraordinary human being." Emma hugged him tightly. "You would have done the same for us, Mr. Robert. That's what people do. We help each other." Later that night, after Robert and Sarah had left, Marcus tucked Emma into bed. She looked up at him with those wise green eyes and asked, "Daddy, do you think Mommy would be proud of us?" Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. His wife had been the kindest person he'd ever known, always helping neighbors, always seeing the good in people. He'd tried so hard to pass that legacy on to their daughter. Baby, she'd be so incredibly proud of both of us. As he turned off her light, Emma's voice came soft in the darkness. "I'm glad we stopped, Daddy, even though it was scary." "Me too, sweetheart, me too." Marcus stood in the doorway, watching his daughter drift off to sleep, and thought about how easily they could have driven past that night. How one choice made in a moment of rain and fear had rippled outward in ways he never could have imagined. Robert and Sarah were rebuilding their relationship. Their own lives had been touched by an outpouring of community support. And somewhere out there, maybe someone else would hear their story and choose to stop, to help, to take a risk on a stranger. In the end, it wasn't about the recognition or the rewards. It was about the simple truth that Emma had understood instinctively that night in the rain. We're all connected, all human, all worthy of compassion. And sometimes the most extraordinary thing you can do is the most ordinary act of kindness when someone needs it most.